This episode is sponsored by Rocket Mortgage. I've made a lot of meals in apartment kitchens over the years, but thanks to you guys watching along at home, I've been able to buy the place of my dreams. And that includes this awesome studio kitchen. Like any big change, there's always a few steps you need to take to set things in motion. I chatted about my path to this point on Rocket Mortgage's new show, Big Change, and you can check it out at the link in the video description. Let's get down to basics. Alright, so the first thing cookies need is a dough, so we're going to make a sort of master dough. One that with a bit of tweaking should be able to yield 4 different kinds of cookies, or biscuits as they are sometimes incorrectly called. I'm just kidding. First things first, in most cookie contexts, you're going to get a lot of mileage out of browning your butter. You can do this by cooking your butter over medium heat, stirring constantly for about 5 minutes, until the milk proteins separate into little bits and begin to turn a lovely toasty brown. At this point, to prevent it from burning, we want to get it out of the hot pan right away, and just to be safe, you could throw a couple ice cubes in there if you want. Then you're going to want to cover it and let it solidify overnight in the fridge. For this recipe, it's imperative that every element of the cookie dough is as cold as possible. And since butter gets rather sturdy when it's cold, really the only way to make this recipe is with a stand mixer or a very powerful hand mixer. We're starting with 8 ounces of unsalted butter, 6.5 ounces if you browned it beforehand because it tends to lose moisture in the cooking process. We're going to soften it up a little bit with the paddle attachment of our stand mixer before adding 4.5 ounces of granulated sugar and 9.75 ounces of light brown sugar. Then we're creaming those together on high speed for about 3 minutes until the mixture becomes light and fluffy. Scrape off the paddle and down the sides of the bowl, and then we can get to adding our eggs, 2 large eggs, added one at a time while the mixer is running on medium speed, making sure that each egg is fully incorporated before adding the next. Scrape down the paddle and the sides of the bowl once again, and then it's time to introduce our dry ingredients to the party. In a separate bowl, we are combining 11.5 ounces of all-purpose flour, a tablespoon of kosher salt, and a half teaspoon of baking soda. Tiny whisk until thoroughly combined, dump into the stand mixer, and mix until just mixed. That is, the flour is fully hydrated and no dry patches remain. And there you have it, our basic, baseline, all dough and no cookie dough. And this is where we begin chapter 1 of your choose your own adventure cookie novel. Sure, this would be perfect for good old-fashioned chocolate chip and walnut, but why not start things off by going a little crazy? Here I've got some of the kettle corn from earlier this week, which I'm going to chop up into even more bite-sized pieces. Toss them in there with, I don't know, how about some nice chopped up pretzels? I'm just kind of eyeballing all this, along with a handful of butterscotch chips, maybe a spirited sprinkling of M&Ms, and what the hell, I'm feeling frisky, how about some chopped up bite-sized butterfingers? Really, you can put anything you want in here, but at the end of the day, you want to add about 12 ounces of toppings all told. Massage those toppings into the dough as minimally as possible. You don't want to build up gluten and end up with tough cookies. Then cover and refrigerate for at least 1 hour and up to 3 days. In fact, the longer the better. 3 days in the fridge is going to help sort of dry age your cookie dough and give it some really subtle, delicious flavor. As you can see, I'm doling them out using a small ice cream scoop onto a parchment-lined baking sheet and baking on the middle rack at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for 18 to 20 minutes, rotating halfway through baking and really starting to check after like 15 minutes. No 2 ovens are alike, and this might take a couple batches to get perfect. Once you've let these cool on the tray for about 5 minutes and are able to rotate them freely without them falling apart, transfer them onto a wire rack where you can allow them to cool completely, if you can control yourself. In the meantime, why don't we try a slightly more elegant combination? I got 4 ounces of macadamia nuts that I'm going to toast at 375 for 5-10 minutes until they're just starting to become toasty. Let those cool completely before chopping them up and adding them to your base batter. Then I'm generally not such a big fan of white chocolate, but it works beautifully in this recipe. I got 4 ounces worth that I'm going to chop up into bite-sized pieces. Then I got myself 2 ounces of dried unsweetened cranberries and 2 ounces of dried sweetened coconut. Get that all mashed up in there, make sure to refrigerate completely before baking, at least 1 hour, ideally up to 3 days. Then scoop out and bake as before, 375 for 18 to 20 minutes. Middle rack, rotating halfway through, and letting cool for about 5 minutes on the sheet tray until you can twist them freely without breaking them. Then go ahead and transfer them to a wire rack, and there there you have it, white chocolate macadamia nut cranberry coconut cookies. Now you might be saying to yourself, Babs, where's the chocolate? Well, I got you chocolate right here. We're going to prepare our dough the exact same way up to the point of adding the dry ingredients. Then we're subbing 4 ounces of the flour for high quality Dutch processed cocoa powder. So that's 7.5 ounces of all-purpose, 4 ounces of cocoa powder, and the same old half teaspoon of baking soda and tablespoon of salt. We're also going to add 1 teaspoon of instant espresso powder. This isn't enough to make it taste like coffee, it's just going to make it extra chocolatey. Tiny whisk until homogeneous, and then carry on as before. Add the dry stuff, mix on medium-low until just incorporated, and there you have it, a single tweak rich chocolate version of our cookie dough. Now all it needs is some delicious fillings. How about a coffee-toffee cookie, or as Jess likes to call it, the portmanteau. First we're going to add 12 chopped up ounces of your favorite chocolate-covered toffee bar, and an additional 1 to 2 teaspoons of that instant espresso powder. This will make it taste a little like coffee. Mix everybody up, cover, fridge, and bake as before. Now, chocolate cookies are a little bit more challenging because due to their color, it's harder to tell when they're done. In fact, you might want to make a batch of their blondie brethren before even attempting these, so you know how your oven behaves and when to pull the damn things out. Same deal, let them cool in the pan for about 5 minutes until you can twist them without breaking them apart. Transfer to a rack and let cool completely if you can. And now you might be saying, Babs, that's still not enough chocolate for me. Well then, folks, I think it's time that we went all the way. Triple chocolate. 6 ounces of high quality chocolate chips and 6 ounces of freshly chopped high quality chocolate into a batch of chocolate cookie dough, and maybe think about chocolate while you're mixing it all together. Cover, fridge, bake, batch, Babish. There you have it, folks, the very chocolatiest cookies in all the land. We've talked a lot about how these cookies are made, but how do they look, feel, and taste? Well, they've got a lightly crunchy exterior and a dense, chewy interior. They're well proportioned and filled with delicious stuff, and just a picture-perfect portrait of everything I love most about cookies. And we've managed to make 4 different kinds of cookies with pretty much the same base dough. They're best eaten within 2 days and freeze beautifully if you can even keep them that long. I know it sounds like a joke, but it's not. These barely lasted 48 hours. Thanks again to Rocket Mortgage for sponsoring this episode. Like I mentioned earlier, I was part of their new show on YouTube called Big Change, where I talk about the crazy journey it's been from making this show in a number of different kitchens to now, where I get to work in this studio every day. And that's thanks to you guys. Head to the link in the video description to watch the episode on the Rocket Learn YouTube channel.